JoAnn Planning.
Hello, Grassroots. What a great... Thank you. See, I still get a whole lot more "you go girl" than I do the other. So, yeah. Did we go over the things that we're going to be doing the next few weeks? Did y'all go over that? Okay, well, let's hit the high spots of that. Next week is a real important meeting. We have Mary Lynn. Now, her name is very long, lots of letters. Gerstenschlager. Mary Lynn Gerstenschlager. She is the Vice President of Texas Eagle Forum, and she's going to be doing a presentation on the Turkish Gulen Charter Schools movement in Texas. That organization has more charter schools in Texas than any other company. They have 36 charter schools. Did you know that their officials do not have to be United States citizens? So Mary Lynn is going to tell you about why that's a problem and what those schools are doing. So that's a very important topic. Then on the 29th, the following Friday, Ted Cruz, the next United States Senator, will be our speaker. And I believe that his dad, Raphael, will be here. I don't know how many of you have ever met Raphael. I'll tell you this, Ted, and when he introduces his dad, he says, you know, people say, I like Ted Cruz, okay? But the women say, I love Raphael. And I tell you what, I love Raphael. I'd take him home with me if I could. He is wonderful. I love him. Anyway, Raphael's going to be here, so we are really looking forward to that, and we're going to have a special media time before then, so whenever you see him come in the door, let Ted take care of the media, and then he'll be out here to talk to you all. This coming Tuesday, I will be speaking in Flower Mound, and it's at 7 p.m. at Salerno's Restaurant in Flower Mound. That information is on the website in case you know somebody there that you think doesn't have anything better to do than to come out and hear me rant and rave about the Texas legislature. But I'm going to talk about some of the things that happened during the convention last week and why that's important to the next legislative session. In July, our meetings will be at Cornerstone. July 6th, we're not going to have a meeting. That is Independence Week. And quite frankly, I just need a break because I have got to focus on runoffs. So I'm asking you to volunteer to help in a runoff election. If you don't have family and friends and things the weekend after July 4th, please work that Friday. Please do something important for Liberty that Friday instead of having a meeting. On July 13th, we're holding that open. We hope that we're going to have a presentation on the Vacation Liberty School. And then July 20th, local oil and gas businessman Harold McGowan, who's been here before, he moderated our forums, our first forum on the Railroad Commission. Harold's going to do a presentation on fracking. And you've heard a lot, if y'all are not familiar with the oil and gas industry, you don't know what fracking is. And some of the environmentalists are going to make you think the world's going to come to an end if we have fracking. So we're going to have Harold is going to make a presentation on that. Now, a funny thing happened this week before I start telling you about what happened at the convention. Yesterday, my phone started ringing because now we have competing interest in our community for your wallet. The competing interest is the new City of Tyler Convention Center Arena and the Tyler bond election, Tyler ISD bond election. So it's pretty funny because they start calling to say, I need to talk to you. I need to talk to you. So I haven't returned those calls because the only thing that's important to me right now is July 31st runoff and that we were successful with that. So I'll try to return those calls over the weekend, but it's going to be something like, talk to me again after July 31st. But y'all just watch out for your wallets. They want to take a swipe at it. Okay, I'm going to read you the plank out of the 2010 Republican Party of Texas platform from 2010. I want to start there, and then I'm going to tell you what happened. We have pre-amnesty in the state of Texas. Now our Texas GOP has embraced a pre-amnesty plan, and it's wrong. But guess what happened today? President Obama declared about 800,000 young illegals who came here illegally, weren't born here, but came here illegally. They can stay and get a work visa. I guess he thinks that's going to be a vote getter. But I can tell you that our problem in the state of Texas is not the Democrat Party. You hear me? Our problem in the state of Texas is not the Democrat Party, it's the liberals in the Republican Party. And I define a liberal as someone who doesn't understand the limited government as expressed in the United States Constitution. So here we go. Under illegal immigration in the 2010 Texas Republican Party platform said, with growing impatience, the American people in overwhelming numbers have asked our government to secure our borders. They now demand it, and we as a party agree with the American people. Illegal aliens have, by definition, violated U.S. law. We oppose illegal immigration, amnesty in any form leading to citizenship, or legal status for illegal immigrants. We support an end to catch and release policy, criminal penalties, and aggressive enforcement for those who knowingly employ illegal workers. We support expeditious hearings on deporting nonviolent illegal immigrants. We support amending the U.S. Constitution to suspend automatic U.S. citizenship to children born to illegal immigrants. We support the elimination of federal and state funding to cities with sanctuary laws. We support empowering state and local law enforcement agencies with authority and resources to detain illegal immigrants. We support the rejection of non-verifiable foreign-issued cards as valid identification. Those are the ones that are distributed by the consulates. We support the strict prosecution of any entity that is involved in phony identification documents. We support the elimination of day labor work centers. We support the elimination of laws requiring hospitals to give non-emergency care to illegals. We support the elimination of Social Security benefits or federal and state funding to illegals for education, for housing, or business loans. We support preventing any foreign entity from using our judicial system to enter the United States. We support documentation verification prior to issuance of a Texas driver's license and the withholding of federal highway funds from any state issuing driver's licenses to illegal aliens, and the aggressive prosecution of persons smuggling humans across our borders. We support requiring all employers to utilize E-Verify system to confirm the legal status of all new hires. That was gutted. What we have now is something called the Texas Solution. I'm going to read it to you and then I'm going to analyze it for you and tell you what's wrong with it. But I can tell you that throughout this document, when a word was used, we support or we urge, it's now been weakened to say we encourage. I can encourage people to go to the grocery store and buy something today. I can encourage you to go to church, which I do. But there's a lot of difference in we support and we urge and we encourage. So welcome to the kinder, gentler Texas GOP. The Texas solution now says, because of decades-long failure of the federal government to secure our borders and address the immigration issue, there are now upwards of 11 million undocumented individuals in the United States today, each of whom entered and remain here under different circumstances. The mass deportation of these individuals would neither be equitable nor practical. While blanket amnesty, as occurred with the Simpson-Mazzoli Act of 1986, would only encourage future violations of the law, we seek common ground to develop and advance a conservative, market, and law-based approach to our nation's immigration issues by following these principles. Now, the only reason that law-based was inserted there instead of strictly a market-based solution was because of a Smith County constitutional conservative named Hank Herring, whom I have known a long time and many of you in this room know. Hank fought to have law-based put in there. They had no intention of even mentioning the rule of law. It was simply a market-based solution. Now, before I get into these details, you need to understand that there are some cheap labor, big business people in the state of Texas who have wanted this for a very long time. I'm not going to mention names, but there's a local lobbyist who worked with John McCain and George W. Bush to try to get the DREAM Act and an amnesty program pushed, if you remember a few years ago. That same individual worked with these Texas employers to get this passed. And their names, and I'm going to do a complete side-by-side PowerPoint presentation for this because now I'm getting asked to go speak about this. So haven't had time this week to do that, but I'm going to put it up visually and then I'm going to source it to the people, to the business people in this state who took control of that process in the convention last week in Fort Worth and got their way. Let me tell you first that in those conventions in years past, there's been a strict process by which it was ensured that if you were on the floor, that only eligible delegates were allowed to vote. Last Friday, there was no checking of credentials whatsoever when we went into the arena to vote to get to the platform on Friday night at 9 p.m. In a previous session, a 5 p.m. session of the convention, they had strung it out to the point of discussing granular details about rules, to the point where they had to have a recess in order to allow people to go to the $200 a person Republican dinner, which I boycotted because I have better use for my money than to give money to a party that's going to do this kind of stuff. So if you're in here and you're a GOP loyalist and you're afraid that everybody's going to go haywire and go to a third party just because I'm saying this, I'm sorry. I have no intention of leaving the Republican Party, but I do intend to work to drag it kicking and screaming back to its constitutional conservative roots that we're supposed to be representing. So anyway, we had a recess and we go back in. People start going back in about 8:30 and just droves of people are going through. There was no checking of credentials. Everybody's supposed to be wearing a lanyard with a little thing, you know, the name card thing. But I can tell you, as I looked around that floor, there were visitors and alternates that were sitting among the delegates. This time there was no special section set aside where only alternates sat, where only visitors sat. There was no mention of that by the chairman. Does this sound like a Democrat convention to you yet? Yep. So I began to think there is something really, really wrong going on here. Then I saw the kingpin that likes to promote open borders, and his name is Norm Adams. Norm Adams was running all over the floor, making sure he had his people lined up at the microphones. Well, we had worked all day to make sure that we had some people at all 4 microphones who would be willing to work to try to get this language out of the 2012 platform stricken and the 2010 language I just read to you put back in. We had worked all day. That was our first goal. Then we had a plan B and a plan C. And Stephen Lee was one of the ones. He and Glenn and some others stood at those microphones because we asked them to all day long. That is commitment. Okay? Commitment to principle. So when they went to the recess to let everybody go to dinner and then to come back at 9 p.m., the sergeants at arms had told the men and the ladies at the microphones that we will keep the order you were in at the microphones when you return. When they got back, the chairman had overruled that. And guess what happened? Norm Adams and the open borders people had their people lined up. The other thing you need to know is I have found out from Sergeant at Arms and from different people who served on the platform that Norm Adams and the big business people who want cheap labor had bought lunch and dinner and snacks for the platform committee all week. And for the young kids on the floor that were being Sergeant at Arms and pages. And they were talking about what a lovely, wonderful man he is. I have to tell you all, if we're going to sell our liberty for a meal, we're in hot trouble. All right? So that was the setup, and every vote was a voice vote. A voice vote in an arena that is the way it is there with the steep slanted stadium seats. It's subjective. There was never once a call for a standing vote or for a roll call vote. So this thing got just shoved through. Now, there's someone who has written quite a detailed paper, and we've been working on this all week, about exactly what rules were broken and all that. But you have to understand that in this convention hall, there was never once a determination made that there was actually at 9 p.m. a quorum of the eligible to vote delegates there to be represented to vote. Okay? Never was a quorum determined. Never was there any voice vote or any raising of your hands, which again is subjective. There was never a verification of the people voting by voice or by raising their hands that they were actually eligible to vote. I am ashamed of that, and I am embarrassed as a delegate to the Texas GOP convention that happened. And it needs to never happen again. But I will tell you that the people with deep pockets are in charge of the Texas GOP. So what I am telling you today, and if anybody sees this on YouTube, I ain't taking it back. Do not write a check to the Texas GOP. They don't need your money. They just want you to send in a check, and they want you to shut up because they apparently are going to listen to the big business people that are in charge of it. So you don't send them any more money. If there is a GOP candidate that you want to support, you give that check directly to that candidate and quit letting them skim some of it off the top. Okay? I'll be saying that in Flower Mound, Texas this week too. Okay, so back to this. Under the Secure Our Borders #1 point in this, it says, the U.S. border must be secured immediately. We demand the application of effective, practical, and reasonable measures to secure our borders and to bring safety and security for all Americans along the border and throughout the nation. First of all, there is no mention in here of any required mandated return to the country of origin before you apply for a work visa. We tried to have that language put in here, and we couldn't even get that passed. So do you understand that people, first of all, are going to be able to stay and apply for a visa here? Now, what does the word reasonable mean? You know, what is reasonable to us in this room is not going to be the same definition of reasonable for the people who wrote this. So again, there is a hole big enough for H-E-B grocery stores to drive their trucks through this, and they want to. The people who own that company, part of the people who got this done, because they want cheap labor. There's no specifics as to how the borders will be secured. It's supposed to be effective and practical and reasonable. Do you know what this language is from? It's from the Z visa language that McCain and George W. Bush tried to get the pre-amnesty program. That's where this language came from, guys. Number 2, modernize the United States Social Security card. We support the improvement of our 1936 Social Security card to use contemporary anti-counterfeit technology. The Social Security card will not be considered a national ID card for U.S. citizens. And if you believe that, birthright citizenship. We call on the legislative, executive, and judicial branches of the United States to clarify Section 1 of the 14th Amendment to limit citizenship by birth to those born to a citizen of the United States with no exceptions. That, my friends, is called a bone they're throwing to the conservatives. Number 4, create an effective and efficient temporary worker program. A national temporary worker program should be implemented to bring skilled and unskilled workers. Skilled and unskilled workers to the United States for temporary periods of time when no U.S. workers are currently available. Who decides that? Who decides that? My friends, there are jobs to be done in the United States, but we've had a culture of people who've been told that blue collar or hard work where you go outside and you sweat real hard are not, that's beneath you. And our education system has gone to everybody's got to go to college because that keeps feeding higher ed. So consequently, we've got and then the 99 weeks of unemployment. So you take all of those pieces of that puzzle, and now you have this in your face. They want to bring skilled and unskilled workers in here for an unspecified amount of time. Now, so what is temporary? They never define in here temporary. Not one time do they define what temporary is. So it says that the program should also require self-funding through participation fees and fines. So who's going to collect these fees and fines? Who's going to do that? I suspect we're going to get a new federal department, don't you? Applicants must pass a full criminal background check. Applicants with prior immigration violations would only qualify the program if they pay the appropriate fines. So, where's the mechanisms by which this can be enforced? Because they never speak at all to the responsibility of state government for the interior enforcement of the rule of law inside the boundaries of the state of Texas. They give the legislature a complete pass. Applicants and or employers must prove that they can afford and or secure private health insurance. Okay, so you got mandated health insurance here for skilled and unskilled workers coming from other countries here to work. So, okay, so who's going to make sure that everybody dots every I and crosses every T on that? The applicant must show a proficiency in the English language and complete an American civics class. Okay, so who determines they're proficient? So everybody that's got a temporary visa, and we don't know what temporary means, they're skilled and unskilled workers, who's going to run around checking whether or not they're proficient in the English language and in American civics? Are we going to start giving pop quizzes on the job? Temporary workers would only be able to work for employers that deduct and match payroll taxes. All participants would be issued an individual temporary worker biometric ID card that tracks all address changes and both civil and criminal court appearances as a defendant. So how can you enforce this if you have a portable visa? I don't know about that, guys. So then over here I'm going to tell you what they say about some of the language that they sprinkled through here. On border security, it only says the state of Texas has the right to protect their citizens, businesses, and ranches if the federal government fails to enforce their applicable laws. So how does the state of Texas do that? Because you've left out a ban on sanctuary cities. You've left out the language that we had that we supported in Arizona-style law. You've left out the language that we don't want these day labor camps in the state of Texas. And when it talks about English as our language, it says we encourage it. And on welfare reform, it says we encourage welfare reform in the following area: denying benefits to individuals who cannot prove citizenship. So, okay, the temporary workers that are here for an unspecified amount of time, you're going to deny them benefits. Yeah, we really believe that. So now what does all this mean for, oh, one more thing. The college tuition, they said that they were calling for the legislature to repeal in-state tuition for children of illegals. This is what it actually says. We recommend 3 levels of college tuition. In-state requiring proof of Texas legal citizenship. Out-of-state requiring proof of U.S. citizenship. And non-resident legal alien. Non-U.S. citizens should not be eligible for state or federal grants or loans. It does not prohibit the children of illegal aliens from getting the tuition breaks. They still get that, guys. So, under educational entitlement, it says we encourage legislation that prohibits enrollment in free public schools of non-citizens unlawfully present in the United States. Now, what this means is that we have people that were in charge of the platform for the Texas GOP that think the rule of law really doesn't matter. And they want to have their way. And I will tell you today, they're not angry at President Obama for what he did. They are not. But I will tell you that we had a report this week from the border volunteers. And for just the month of May, down at Falfurrias, at that one border station, they had 1,700 arrests for illegal aliens. That one border station across the entire state of Texas for 1 month, the month of May. 1,700 arrests. 61% of those were OTMs, other than Mexicans. Did you hear what I said? 1,700 arrested at one border patrol station in Falfurrias. 1,700, and 61% of those were other than Mexicans. For those of you who were here when we had Brigitte Gabriel, do you remember what Brigitte said? That Texas is the #1 place in the United States as a training ground for homegrown terrorists. You got to ask yourself, next year when we have people running for governor and we have people running for lieutenant governor, I will tell you this, Jerry Patterson, who helped this happen, is not welcome here. Jerry Patterson stood up there, and this is the way the psychological tools work. People come in with honorable and noble credentials, but they ply you with those so then they can feed you the nasty medicine and get you to take it and not even know you swallowed the poison. He said, I'm a Marine. I'm a Vietnam veteran. And I was the sponsor for the concealed handgun license legislation. That means you can pack heat in the state of Texas if you've got a CHL. And then he talked about how he was for mom and apple pie and the American flag. And he's for English as the official language. And he's for this and he's for that. But at the end of the day, he was given special privilege at that convention to speak as an elected official who has already declared he's a candidate for lieutenant governor next year. And he said, I support this Texas solution for illegal immigration. I support these temporary work visas for people who don't have to return to the country of origin to apply first. So I'm just going to tell you, you know, if y'all want to have Jerry come in here and he can compete with the others, but I will tell you what, there is no way that I would ever endorse or support Jerry Patterson for any other office, elected office, based on this. I appreciate the fact that Jerry's a Marine. I appreciate the fact that he is a Vietnam veteran. And I appreciate his stand on Second Amendment rights. But I do not appreciate his open borders amnesty position, because it weakens the rule of law, and it is going to hurt Texans who are American citizens and legal residents. Because, guys, we're just surrendering here. I will tell you, it is a crying shame. And I testified before the platform committee Friday night, I guess it was. And I told them, it's a shame in the state of Texas that we don't have leadership like they do in South Carolina and in other states. Because if you remember when Nikki Haley, soon after she was elected governor of South Carolina, she said, we can't afford this anymore, and we're going to stop it here. Because only citizens and legal residents need to have our jobs and need to have social services paid for with taxpayers. I've already told y'all about the red ink that we're going to have in Austin. This does nothing to stop it, because this platform has given your state legislature a complete pass. It doesn't recommend, encourage, ask them to do one thing: to enforce the rule of law inside of the state of Texas. Do y'all get the difference between what the federal government's responsibility is to secure the border and the state's interior enforcement? Do y'all understand the difference in that now? I want to see a show of hands here. Does anybody in this room believe that your state officials don't have a responsibility? Is there anybody? Because I will stay with you here the rest of this day and night to convince you are wrong. So we've got to pay attention to what these elected officials say and what they do. Because to sit there in that convention and to see those people around me think this was just fine and vote for it, I have to tell you, it was incredibly disappointing because people are not paying attention to what these words mean. Words have meaning, and it's way too late to put the milk back in the jar now with this. But I will tell you, during the next legislative session, there's going to be a coalition of people across this state that are going to try to do everything they can to keep the state legislature from pointing to this as an excuse. I make a prediction to you now. The Texas GOP platform, for the first time in the 20 years I've lived in this state, for the first time, this document will be relevant in the legislative session because some liberal is going to point to this and say, oh, well, you know, the people that represent the GOP values, they were selected in every one of their own communities. And they came here, and this is bottom up. This isn't bottom up. This was a top-down smackdown, and it was done, you know, without regard to any voting rules whatsoever. So, you know, y'all are looking at me like, oh my gosh, can you just come in here one day, just one Friday, and tell us something good? Are there some good things in this platform? Yes. But you know what? My job is not to pat people on the back for doing the right thing. You ought to just do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. But it is my job to tell you when liberty is in danger, and it is in the state of Texas. So somebody, if you've got just a couple of questions, I don't want to keep you too long. Yes, Dr. Kane.
Is that document available online for us to read?
Yes, it is. Yes. If you Google Texas GOP, you'll get it. Anybody else?
Yeah. How could Obama give work permits to anybody who wants to? Will Congress do any damn thing up there?
No, they won't do any blank thing about it because we have spineless people in Congress. I mean, he did this by executive order today. But I mean, this is not the first one, and I will guarantee you this is not the last one he's going to issue before November. I just hope we have elections in November. Y'all, whatever you do, pray for our country, pray for our candidates, pray for those elected officials, even the ones that you could smack upside the head. Pray for them anyway, because that is what we're supposed to do. I love you guys. Come on.